Okay. So go ahead and start now. You can say a few words and then.
All right. Well, thank you so much for providing me this opportunity. Let me know if the volume's okay on my voice.
Yes.
All right. We're going to be speaking today about the stage of Anistha-bhajana-kriyā. But as a build-up to that discussion, we will be talking about the ingress of bhakti into the jiva's life, just to kind of set the stage for involvement in bhakti. And then we will follow along the presentation as provided by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his Madhurya Kadambini, which is an elaboration upon Sri Rupa Goswami's verse, which is an elaboration upon the instructions of Suta Goswami at the very beginning of the Bhagavat Purana. So all this is in relationship with today's exercise of a japa retreat. And we will begin now. Anistha-bhajana-kriyā, unsteady devotional practice.
It's dangerous.
So we're going to enter into this discussion through the portal of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Shiksastakam, and specifically the second verse of the Shiksastaka, Nam Nam Akadi Bahuda Nija Sarvashakti Tritarpita Niyamita Smarane Nakala Itadrasi Tava Kripa Bhagavan Mamapi Durdaivam Idrisam Ihajani Nanu Raga. So, in the beginning of Sri Chaitanya's Shiksastakam, everything is full of benedictions. This Sankirtan movement, specifically in the first verse, this Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss. It enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. And going on into the second verse, singing the glories of the holy name. It's full of all potencies, and there's no hard and fast rules. And then all of a sudden, we come up to this one phrase, Dur Daivam. Here is Krishna himself, in the guise of a devotee, saying, everything's great about this Sankirtan movement, but I can't participate fully. I can't taste the sweetness of this movement. So one would say, well, wow, everything's great, but even the Lord himself can't fully appreciate his own holy name. What hope do we have? But actually, we should look a little deeper at this verse. We should look at what actually is the situation from another perspective, that this misfortune that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is pointing out is actually a great fortune for us, in that it shows the opportunity that we can have through participation in the Sankirtan movement. What I mean by that is we can see that such misfortune can be turned into the greatest fortune as Sri Chaitanya unfolds involvement in the process of Nam Sankirtan. So, O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings. Thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you've enabled us to easily approach you by your holy names. But I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. So from the first verse of the Sixosticum, we have this idea that this is the prime benediction for humanity at large. And what we find is here that there is a correlation in this prime benediction for humanity at large with the first question presented by the sages of Naimisharanya to Sutta Goswami. Could you please tell us what is the most, I forget how he worded it. What is the greatest thing that one could do for humanity at large? And in response to that, Sutta Goswami said, Savai Pumsam Paro Dharmo, Yato Bhaktira Doksaje, Ahaitakiya Pratiyata, Yayatma Suprasidati. The supreme dharma for all human beings is that by which prem bhakti to the Lord arises, which is not caused by anything other than itself, cannot be obstructed, and which satisfies the mind completely. Now, from this foundational knowledge, we find that although it was followed, this initial verse, Savai Pumsam, by Sutta Goswami, it was followed by a series of verses given by Sutta Goswami, wherein he gives particular indications of the process of devotional practice. I believe in probably about 5 or 7 verses later in that same chapter. But it wasn't being presented by Sutta Goswami in a very systematic manner. Now later, Sri Rupa Goswami gave us a systematic presentation in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of the same components, but in a very structured way. In 2 verses from his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Adao Shraddha Tata Sadhu Anistha-bhajana-kriyā Tato Nartha Nivritti Shat Tato Nista Ruchis Tata Asasaktis Tato Bhavas Tato Premna Yadanchati Sadakanam Ayam Premna Pradur Bhave Bhavet Krama. So in here, we find 9 items of gradual progress, progressive items in the practice of devotion. Shraddha, followed by sadhu sangha, bhajana-kriyā, anartha nivritti, nista, ruchi, asakti, bhava, and prem. So the whole verse in English is translated as follows. One first attains shraddha, or firm faith, in the shastras and teachings of sadhus. Then one gradually passes through the stages of sadhu sangha, association of pure devotees, bhajana-kriyā, practice of bhakti, anartha nivritti, cessation of unwanted elements unfavorable to the practice of bhakti, nista, steadiness, ruchi, taste, asakti, attachment to the Lord, bhava, permanent attachment to the Lord, and finally praying, divine love. In this way, praying gradually manifests in the devotee's heart. Now, our discussion today will be centered around Bhajana-kriyā. The stage of Anistha-bhajana-kriyā is within the practice of bhakti. So before we go there, let's look to Sri Chaitanya's explanation of from where does this bhakti come? And he explained this to Srila Rupa Goswami. Brahmanda, Brahmeti Konya, Bhagyavan Jiva, Guru Krishna Prasadipaya, Bhakti Lata Beach. According to their karma, all living entities are wandering throughout the entire universe. Some of them are being elevated to the upper planetary systems, and some are going down into the lower planetary systems. Out of many millions of wandering living entities, one who is very fortunate gets an opportunity to associate with a bona fide spiritual master by the grace of Krishna. By the mercy of both Krishna and the spiritual master, such a person receives the seed of the creeper of devotional service. Now, Srila Rupa Goswami has outlined, as we just read, 9 different stages or steps in devotional involvement. And there are, as I said, our discussions today is going to be primarily about Vishwanath Chakravarti's elaboration. He took these 2 verses of Srila Rupa Goswami and he expanded upon them in his Madhurya Kadambini. And Madhurya Kadambini is really a handbook for our devotional practice. Very important presentation. And I would at this time like to offer obeisance to Anantadas Babaji, who has given us an English presentation of Madhurya Kadambini. I'm not sure if he presented it in English or if it was translated from a Hindi edition by his disciples. But Swami Tripurari has, when I first wanted to study more deeply Madhurya Kadambini, he recommended that I go to this edition, and it is extremely comprehensive, and I would recommend any serious student to take advantage of this edition of the translation in English of Madhurya Kadambini and the accompanying commentary by Anantadas Babaji. So Anantadas Babaji ki jai. Now, we look at the 9 stages or steps, and I'm going to elaborate on that a little bit more later, but we find that in the Bhagavat Purana, in Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary, on the second chapter, Suta Goswami presents, as I said, the various practices which constitute the beginning of one's devotion. We find there, after presenting those in an unsystematic way, that Vishwanath Chakravarti, he has written his own verse in his commentary. And in that verse, excuse me, he provides us with he elaborates on the 9. And I thought it would be good to share that elaboration with you. Now, his 14 steps, he's taken the 9 and he's presented a little differently, a couple of them, but he's added a couple at the beginning and a couple at the end. So his 14 steps, so from the 9 of Rupa to the 14 of Vishwanath, are as follows. So the first step in his listing is mercy of the devotees, followed by service to the devotees, and then faith, surrender to the guru, desire for worship is his 5th item. Then the 6th item is bhakti. The 7th is clearing of anarthas, and then some continuity, nista, ruchi, asakti, Raiti, and Prem. And then he ends his listing after Prem with 2 additional items: seeing the Lord, actually having the Lord's darshan, and experiencing the full sweetness of the Lord. Now, the reason I bring up Vishwanath's 14 steps is because we're going to go into a little deeper understanding of this in conjunction with what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed to Rupa Goswami, that the nature of this bhakti is by some very good fortune. And this very good fortune is, of course, the Lord's mercy. And the Lord is affording the jiva his mercy through the vehicle of his devotees. There's nothing we can really do to acquire that good fortune. There's nothing in the material realm that we can do. There's no amount of piety. There's no amount of austerity, no amount of charity, no amount of scriptural study, no gyan, no karma, yoga. None of these things can bring one to the point of bhakti. Bhakti is completely independent, yadrichaya, of her own nature, and truly there is nothing. And I was thinking about this morning. How could I really give some indication? And what came to me was, as you know, here at Sagrahi, Guru Maharaj has, we've built our dairy based on going to existing dairies and purchasing from them cows who are already giving milk, but that those cows would either be retired by the dairy soon, and but they wouldn't be impregnated again. They're like at the end of their cycle, right? So Guru Maharaj has gone there and he's seen all the different cows, and he's made a selection, and he's brought that selection back to our dairy. And in essence, what has he done? He's saved that cow from certain death. That cow is going to the slaughterhouse. But out of nothing that the cow did, along comes the sadhu and saves it. That's what happens when bhakti comes into our life. We are headed for certain death. We've been in the cycle of samsara eternally without a beginning, and all of a sudden we're saved out of causeless mercy, the causeless ingress of bhakti. So that's why we look to Vishwanath's writing at the beginning of his commentary on the second chapter in the Bhagavad Purana. And he has this, the very first thing that he mentions is mercy of the devotees. This is the beginning of bhakti. This is what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is speaking of in this verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, attributed to him in his instructions to Rupa Goswami. The seed of the creeper of devotional service is then planted. Now, I thought we should go into, well, what is this seed? What exactly are we talking about? Do we is a seed put in our heart? I mean, what exactly? That exactly is also the Bhakti Latij, the seed of the creeper of devotion, is explained by Jiva Goswami in his Laghu Tosani commentary on the Bhagavad Purana, 10th canto. And that seed is matir. Through the association of sadhus, the intention or desire to engage in Krishna bhajan awakens. This intention is called mati and is the seed of the devotional creeper. And that is what the sadhu gives to begin our life in devotional practice. We receive from the sadhu an intent to ourselves follow in his footsteps. From there, as with any seed, the seed has been planted and then it grows. So we'll discuss that growth a little bit. And we will now go to what Vishwanath writes in the beginning of his Madhurya Kadamini about this seed. The wish-yielding creeper of pure bhakti, unmixed with karma and jnana, then takes root in the field of the heart, becomes the refuge of the devotee who firmly vows never to seek any fruits except bhakti, and who, like a bee, is obsessed with the desire to taste nectar, the nourishment and life of this devotee. This creeper is a favorable attitude towards the Lord. The nourishment and life of this creeper is a favorable attitude towards the Lord. Like a touchstone, bhakti's very presence makes the functions of the heart lose their iron-like qualities and acquire spiritual qualities like that of pure gold. Am I doing something wrong on my end? Okay, we'll continue. Everybody can hear me okay? Archana?
Yes.
Thank you. So we'll continue. So from there, we have a seed, and from a seed, a plant grows. And we call this the creeper of bhakti. And the plant, according to the analogy that's presented by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his Madhurya Kadamini, sprouts its first two leaves. And first of those two leaves is referred to in the analogy as Klashagni, and the second, Subhada. So these first two leaves are representative of the stage of sadhana bhakti. So we're familiar with the three general stages of the practice of bhakti: devotional service in practice, devotional service in ecstasy, and devotional service in pure love of God. So our discussion today is very much fixed in the beginning stage, devotional service in practice, and specifically unsteady practice before we become steady. But before we get there, again, I want to set this groundwork. Vishwanath continues to rise his gradually, the sadhana bhakti creeper sprouts and unfolds two leaves. The first leaf is called kleshagni, the dissolution of suffering, and the second is called subhada, the attainment of all auspiciousness. The inner surface of the two leaves is the domain of the king called rag, spontaneous devotion, and is very smooth. The sign of its being born of spontaneous greed. It is superior due to the pure, affectionate relation with the Lord as described in the Bhagavat. I am their dear one, very life, son. The outer surface of the leaf is ruled by another king known as Vaidhi, regulative devotion, and slightly rough in nature, and the sign of its being born of the injunctions of the scriptures. It is somewhat inferior and slightly rough due to lack of pure affectionate relation with the Lord. Srimad Bhagavatam says, therefore, persons desiring fearlessness should worship the Lord, the super soul. However, both Rag and Vaidhi almost equally manifest the symptoms of kleshagni and subhada. So a little explanation of the seeds, the leaves going forward. And it bears some careful consideration on our part and contemplation and fine discrimination in understanding exactly what Vishwanath Chakravarti is presenting here. He's presenting to us the distinction between the two approaches to sadhana bhakti. And the one is rather exceptional. For one to come to the stage of practice of sadhana bhakti automatically with a spontaneous desire to serve the Lord, free of any personal expectation of gain or reward, is truly exceptional. Vishwanath says here, rag means spontaneous, natural, and intense absorption in the Lord. Bhakti enriched with this kind of rag is known as ragatmika bhakti. This is manifested and expressed by the eternal associates of Raj. Bhakti following their footsteps is known as raganuga bhakti. And then Vaidhi, when one is prompted to engage in the practice of devotion by the injunctions of the Shastras rather than spontaneous attraction, it is known as Vidhi Bhakti or Vaidhi Bhakti. Sorry, explanations are from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of Rupa Goswami. Now, it's interesting if we step back and we look at these first two leaves that are coming from this creeper that's grown from this seed of devotion. And we see the first two leaves are what? Kleshagna and subhada. Now, what's the nature of these first two leaves? They are an immediate attainment of a relief from material suffering and attainment of a joyfulness. it would naturally seem that these leaves themselves are supporting, in the beginning, the first results of devotional practice are coming to us, and they're supportive of the idea of a Vaidhi orientation, because there is something coming as a result, and it's beneficial to the practitioner. It's not this selflessness that's spoken of when we speak of Rag Bhakti, where one is following the Rigatmikas. So it's interesting just to consider that the majority of people that are coming to the practice of sadhana bhakti are coming with this orientation. And why? Well, it's natural. We make an ingress into our practice of bhakti utilizing what we're already familiar with. And we're already completely familiar with a selfish, self-centered existence. We have been in material life, everything is centered on that kind of a give and a take. You give and you get in return. So it's natural that bhakti is capturing us and offering us these beginning two benedictions of freedom from suffering. And we're about to go into a little deeper understanding of that. Freedom of suffering and all auspiciousness, subhada. What do they say? Everything's coming up roses. So for the bhakta, everything's, their whole existence is changing. So what do we have of Rag Bhakti in the beginning because of our material conditioning? And what we have of Rag Bhakti that's so essential in the beginning of our devotional practice of sadhana is we have the exemplars of the Rag Bhaktas, the sadhus, that their service is being rendered, and they're giving us a glimpse into that selflessness. And they're speaking to us of the nature of that realm of service. And in their association, in their sangha, we are experiencing directly through their character, how they conduct themselves, and through their discourse, how they speak, even of the most simplest explanations of devotional principles, as we've heard Guru Maharaj speak repeatedly, that Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami, he could speak of the simplest principles of devotional practice and life and philosophy in such a way that, because he was so steep in the highest concepts, that naturally came through even in those discussions, and they touched the heart, and they enriched the heart, and they enthused one to continue in their own practice in pursuit of those ideals. So we do have Rag from the very beginning because of the ideal that's implanted by the sadhu and by the example and discourse of the sadhu. And through that, we imbibe that ideal, although there is still some selfishness and some self-centeredness in us. And in the beginning of sadhana bhakti, that aspect, which we are accustomed to, is interestingly enough aspect that Bhakti Devi reciprocates with. She takes away the suffering. She removes, if not completely samsara, at least the fear of samsara. And she bestows all auspiciousness into the devotee's life, if not immediately, gradually, step by step. Removal from the chains of material existence is effectuated. So let's look at these two. The first, the kleshagna, and just understand a little bit of the kleshas. We're not going to go real deep here, but preliminarily, Vishwanath says in Ms. Madhurya Kadamani, kleshas are of 5 types: avidya, asmita, rag, dvesh, abhinivesh. The 4 types of sins, parabdha, aparabdha, ruda, bija, are also included in klesha. Auspiciousness, subha, refers to divine qualities such as disinterest in material affairs, interest in the Lord, serving the Lord favorably, mercifulness, forgiveness, truthfulness, straightforwardness, evenness of temper, steadiness, gravity, respectfulness, humility, all good fortune, and so on. The Bhagavat says all the good qualities of the demigods reside within the devotees. So let's take a quick look at these. So the 5 types of kleshas, they all come from the first, which is ignorance. Then we get false ego, attachment, rag, hatred, dvesha, and yeah, we're pretty afraid of death for the most part. We go on to the 4 types of karma. Aparabdha. Aparabdha is like a sea of karma, a sea of sinful reaction that is within us. We have accumulated since time immemorial. Now, gradually, some of those reactions, both good and bad, they begin to aggregate. And that they aggregate to the point of actually becoming a seed of desire on our part in relationship to our material life. And when that seed actually comes to the point of bearing fruit, that's referred to as parabdha karma. The practice of sadhana bhakti from the very beginning gradually eliminates all these 4 types of karma. As stated in the Padma Purana, all the sins, namely aparabdha, kuta, bija, parabdha, get gradually destroyed when one's body, mind, and life are engaged in the devotion of the Lord.
Hey.
It's like placing an
Yeah.
iron. Yes?
Ja,
Yeah,
jag
someone,
har lite börjat.
someone needs to mute.
Am I doing?
Okay, go ahead.
So it's like placing an iron in a fire. As we engage more and more in devotional life, then these kleshas, born of ignorance, are gradually eliminated, along with the reactions that have built up with us as far as karma. even up to the point of parabdha itself. Basically, for the sadhu, coming to an end of his entire material existence, although he appears before us and we certainly see a form, as devotees, we're led to understand that the proper way to approach such a sadhu, an uttama bhakti, is to see that they even have, that their form is even material anymore. It's quite a high standard. So, a little introduction, and now we'll get to the subject that we've been requested to speak on today. We have a little foundation, and we'll proceed here with the Madhurya Kadambini and an explanation of the stage of Anistha-bhajana-kriyā. Within the stage of bhajana-kriyā, or the practice of the different devotional items, it is of two kinds: Anistha, unsteady, and Nisa, steady. Anistha-bhajana-kriyā gradually appears in 6 stages: Utsaha-mayi, Gana, Tarala, Vyuda, Vikalpa, Visaya, Sangara, Niyama, Aksama, and Taranga, Rangani. These stages accordingly mark the devotees' symptoms. So, 6 forms of a steady devotional practice, Anistha-bhajana-kriyā. And as we go through these, bear in mind that these 6 stages that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out to us are, what do we want to say? They're psychological roadblocks that can impede our progress if we allow them to. But if we can be detached from what we can observe happening with our own psychology, then we maintain steady devotion. So I wrote a few articles on these 6, maintaining steady practice, maintaining steady devotion, something like that.
Steady practice during unsteady devotion.
Yeah, steady practice during unsteady devotion. So it's important that we understand that detachment is our best tool in looking at these. And as we go through them and kind of look at the psychology that comprises these 6 psychological stages, that we can view them in a detached way. And if we can, knowledge of them will support and assist us in our advancement in practice. Swami Tripurari, when I wrote those articles under his direction, he said, one thing that you need to repeatedly remind devotees in these articles is that the practicing devotee needs to have realistic expectations. And this really ties back to the beginning of our discussion today. Realistic expectations means, even from the viewpoint of Sri Chaitanya, I am so unfortunate, I have no attraction. Honesty, in having the integrity to be honest with yourself, is fundamental. Having the ability to use your own discrimination to see within yourself that you are affected by one of these 6 psychological roadblocks that Vishwanath points out, or maybe even other psychological roadblocks that he hasn't, but your spiritual master has pointed out in your practice. He's pointed out ones that are typical, and he's pointed out ones that whereby sadhus can observe their disciples and understand where they are in their advancement. And for ourselves, we can take advantage of his association and his Madhurya Kadambini and see, yeah, I've been there, I've done that. No, I'm not there yet. Yeah, I feel this. Now, these stages, although they're referred to as stages, and we may look at them as being progressive one from the other, there is some progression, but there's also some mixing. So it's not just black and white. I go through this stage and I'm done with it. Just like when we look at Rupa's verse, the same thing is there. These things build up over our devotional lives. It's not that, oh, I've gone through Shraddha, Adao, Shraddha, Tata, Sadhu. All I've associated with the Sadhu, I'm done with that one. Now I can go on and do my own bhajan. Okay. And, now I can go to Anartha Nivritti. Well, done with Anarthas. Now no. Anarthas carry through all the way up to bhava. And that the strength of our faith, Shraddha, increases all the way up to bhava and beyond, to prem and beyond. Faith is ever increasing. Sadhu Sangha is ever increasing. Dispensing with anarthas, misplaced values, is ever increasing. So, and of course, ruchi, asakti, attachment is increasing. Bhava is increasing beyond anything that we can even comprehend with our current mind and senses. So, without going on too long, let me walk through these quickly with you. Anistha-bhajana-kriyā, today's discussion. So, initial enthusiasm, running hot and cold, parading possibilities, the sensual struggle, vow failure, whirling in the waves. So these are the 6 items. Vishwanath speaks of them as follows. Utsahamai, enthusiasm in prideful practice. Vishwanath writes here, now the stage of initial enthusiasm is described. A new devotee feels like a young Brahmana boy beginning his Vedic studies, thinking, I have become a learned scholar worthy of everyone's praise. He feels a temporary enthusiasm in his studies. Similarly, a temporary enthusiasm is seen in a devotee just beginning bhajan. This stage of bhajana-kriyā is known as utsahamai because a temporary enthusiasm is seen in a devotee. And boy, we need it. And it helps. That enthusiasm. I mean, in the beginning, it helps get the ship off the launch pad, so to speak. We need to think, I've got it. I've got this. I can do this. Because Maya has her claws in a little more deeply than we can imagine. So in the beginning, it applies to a lot of things. It's not just devotional practice. When we start anything, we feel some initial enthusiasm. We like that. It's good for us. We like to repeat that. We repeat it January 1st of every year, a new initial enthusiasm. This year, I will exercise every day. I will give up chocolate. No, that's not going to happen. But some things like that. So initial enthusiasm in our prideful practice. In the beginning, It's naturally there. And then we move on, running hot and running cold. And I'll just give you a little personal commentary on these, as opposed to reading what Vishwanath's written here. Understand that this presentation I'm giving today will be elaborated on, and I'm going to take this approach and start to present short videos specifically on Madhurya Kadambini in a series to cover the whole book, which will be extremely comprehensive and be available as YouTube videos of these slide presentations with some commentary behind them. So all these you'll be able to go back and study as I release those forthcoming. So productive and inattentive service. Once that initial booster rocket has fallen away, then we really see that, yeah, there's some work involved in this devotional life. I've got some personal soul searching to do here. So sometimes we're feeling great. We read the scriptures, we understand what we're reading, and we love what we're doing. And then other days it's like, I don't really want to cut the vegetables. Why do I have to clean the bathrooms? Or whatever it may be. I'm, of course, of the old school when we all lived in a temple together. But I'm sure in today's household temple environments, the same feelings are there. I have to get up. I've got to get the kids ready for school. And I had enough of them last night. I don't really need to put these little devotees in the car and drive them again and bathe them and feed them and make their life. So in so many ways, whatever has been set aside for our devotional lives that we must engage with, we run hot and cold. Some days we're enthusiastic to do service. Some days we're not so enthusiastic. Now, we go on, and especially in the beginning, we have this, Vyuda Vikalpa. What is our sankalpa? What is our intent? What's really going to serve my devotional life the best? And Vishwanath's talking about that stage where maybe I should be a brahmachari. The scriptures say I should not have a wife and children if I really want to make spiritual advancement. But the scriptures also say I should go through household life and experience that and take on that responsibility and not rush something that I may not be qualified for. Oh, but I want to be the temple president, or 100 different myriad opportunities are placed before us by our flickering mind. Chanchala, what should I do? I should do this, I should do that. And in the beginning, we have 100 different directions that we could go in our devotional life, and the mind is just presenting them one after another. And to really sit down and be steady in the things of devotional practice, those steady activities that really assist us in going deeper and looking inward, escape us because of this endless parade of possibilities that come before us. And my favorite, still working on this one, will be working for many a lifetime, Visayas and God, battle with the senses. The senses just, they have their way, don't they? They want to have their way. And despite that, we need to go on. I came across one verse. Uddhava, where is it?
Above this, say Visaya Sangara.
Yeah, Visaya from Bhagavad Gita. We're familiar with that, where Krishna's personally speaking of that. Visaya vinivartante niharasya dehina rasavarjam rasopyasya param dristra nivartate. Although one may be refrain from material enjoyment following scriptural dictates or in pursuit of yoga regulation, desire for sensual pleasure will not abate. In other words, you have to have a higher taste. Until that higher taste has come naturally through devotional practice, through your sadhana bhakti, through your bhajan, until that taste actually has overwhelmed you to the point that that's all you exist for, your material conditioning is still going to be there. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, you're still going to have some attraction. But he goes on to say, but upon experiencing the extreme bliss of association with the Supreme, attraction to mundane enjoyment will dissipate, and one will become firmly fixed in spiritual consciousness. And one other one that I particularly liked was a statement by Vishwanath in his commentary.
To that verse.
I think to this verse, Krishna is speaking to Uddhava. And he says here, Vishwanath's commentary, the verse spoken to Uddhava by Krishna, having developed faith in topics about me and being disgusted with all karmas, a devotee knows that all enjoyments are filled with misery, but he is unable to give them up. Still, with affection for me, with faith and determination, he will continue worshiping me, while at the same time partaking of those enjoyments which give rise to suffering and yet condemning them. And Vishwanath writes there, let my attachment for family be destroyed or increased. Let there be millions of obstacles to my worship, or let the obstacles be destroyed. Let me go to hell if I have committed offenses by keeping those desires, but I will not give up bhakti. I will not accept karma or gyan, even if Brahma personally comes and orders me. That's nice. And then we have our commitments that we've made to the spiritual master. Our inability to uphold vows, or vows we've made ourselves. Today I'll chant so many rounds, or today, from this day forward, I will not do this or I will not do that. And then we find out that it's sometimes not as easy as we thought to maintain that vow. And then we come to the final unsteadiness that Vishwanath brings up in his Madhurya Kadambini. Now the stage called Taranga Ragini is discussed. The very nature of bhakti is that when it exists in a devotee, everyone becomes attached to him.
Your screen's not showing anymore.
Okay. Well, we're about done, so I won't waste your time.
I see the screen.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's just my computer. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so we'll continue. Even the old sages have said, by the attraction of the people, one becomes wealthy. Facilities like profit, respect, and distinction arising from bhakti are just weeds around the creeper that are compared to small waves on the bhakti ocean. In this stage, a devotee doing bhajan seeks pleasure, ranga, arising out of those waves, taranga. Hence, this stage is called Taranga Ragini. Basically, we're talking about profit, adoration, and distinction. Bhakti does, the bhakta naturally attains characteristics and conduct that is praised by all, and people fall at his feet. People have everything, offer everything to him. And at this stage of unsteady practice, this can be very troublesome to the advancing bhakti. It can actually carry him off track considerably. Lucky Devi will again capture him if he goes too far astray. But Vishwanath's giving some indication that be careful of this prophet adoration distinction. Not to be too harsh, but it's sometimes referred to as subtle sex life by the sages. So we have to be careful that we don't want to be carried away by the waves of the good fortune that bhakti bestows upon us. Rather that we stay fixed on the task at hand, and staying fixed is representative of the next stage, which Guru Maharaj himself is going to speak on tomorrow, the stage of Nisa. And this is characterized by what? This third verse. Bhakti he looked to the Saksastikam, and he saw in the Saksastikam these elements of progressive devotional practice as laid out by Rupa Goswami. So the whole stage of sadhana up through this, even up through and including anartha nivritti, setting aside anarthas, is covered in the second verse, which we began with in our discussion here. And we will end on this verse, showing complete and utter humility. And that humility is going to come upon us naturally, and it's not something that we can accomplish externally. It's not that we strive for humility. Humility will overwhelm us as we realize the extreme good fortune that has come by the mercy of the Guru and the mercy of the association of the sadhus and the devotees. And there's nothing that we could have done to get such subhata in our life. There's no, as we began this discussion, there's nothing, no effort on our part that could, and when we recognize that, then we fall as exemplified in this third verse of the Saksastikam. We actually feel and become this humble at heart. So my hour has expired. And if anyone has a question, I can certainly attempt to answer it to the best of my ability. If not, I thank you so much for your association, and all my respects to your feet.
Really nice slides, Dulal Chandra Prabhu. Thank you. They're so interesting.
Yeah, I agree. It's they're really nice. It's like you're rich in devotion, but then also like rich in knowledge of PowerPoint.
Great images and everything.
And it was a great talk, and it's exciting that you're going to be having them on YouTube. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for having me. Hare
Thank you
Krishna.
for coming and sharing all that with us. Thank you very much.